Almost everyone has seen this rock. A narrow gorge, a turn, and a temple front cut into a cliff 4 stories high. Petra. And a line in the Bible seems to describe it exactly. Who lived in the clefts of the rock? It comes from the shortest book in the Old Testament, 21 verses, in which a nation is sentenced to disappear. But the prophet who wrote that line was dust before the first chisel touched that cliff. So what rock was he looking at? And what happened to the people on it? Obadiah is the smallest book in the Hebrew Bible and one of the hardest to place in time. Every other prophet gives you something to hold. A king, a year, a war. Obadiah gives you a grievance. Readers have placed it anywhere in the past 400 years. Here is the honest version. One reading puts it in the 9th century before Christ, when Edom had just broken free of Judah and raiders had stripped the palace in Jerusalem. Obadiah sits early in the Hebrew collection, among the oldest prophetic voices. And he never names Babylon. He never mentions the burning of the temple. If he wrote after those things, that silence is very strange. The other reading puts him after 586 before Christ, the year Babylon broke Jerusalem. One psalm remembers Edomite voices shouting for the city to be stripped to its foundations. His words, day of ruin, day of distress, carried away captive, fit a catastrophe of that size. Both readings have a hole. The early date struggles to put Edom inside Jerusalem's gates. The late date cannot explain the silence about Babylon. Nothing found in the ground settles it. And yet the charge does not change. Whenever it was written, Edom stood and watched its brother bleed. To understand that charge, you have to understand one word: brother, not sentiment. Law. 2 boys struggle in the womb. The older sells his birthright for a bowl of red stew and takes his name from the color. Edom. Red. The younger steals their father's blessing and runs. Years later they meet again. They weep, they embrace, and they part. Jacob's family becomes Israel. Esau goes south into the red crags of Mount Seir. Israel's law protected what was left of that bond. Do not despise an Edomite, it says. He is your brother. Ancient treaties used the same word. Brother meant obligation. Do not attack. Do not stand by. Then came 800 years of testing it. Moses asks to walk the king's highway. Edom answers with an army on the road, and Israel takes the long way round. David marches in and does not turn aside. Garrisons go up. Edom becomes a vassal. Then the ledger turns. Edom revolts and wins and crowns its own king. A later king of Judah marches south, destroys an Edomite army in the Valley of Salt, and takes a fortress the text calls the Rock. Remember that fortress. By the end, brother is only a word in a law book. And Edom was no small thing. A high plateau east of the Dead Sea, walled by cliffs 1,000 meters high. The great trade road ran along the top, and every caravan paid to use it. Below, in the desert, lay copper. Edom appears outside the Bible, too. An Egyptian border officer's letter, 3,000 years old, records that nomads of Edom let through a frontier fort to water their herds. Assyrian kings cut the names of Edomite kings into their own records. One sent tribute. One is described kissing the feet of the throne. Their names survive, written down by their enemies. Here is the objection, and it is serious. For decades, excavation on the Edomite plateau found nothing early. No walls, no towns, no writing. Nothing before the 8th century. Which would mean that when the Bible describes an Edomite king blocking Moses, or David garrisoning Edom, it describes a kingdom that did not yet exist. Then archaeologists went down into the desert. In the copper district below, the cliffs lies a site whose name means ruins of copper. It is buried in slag, the black, glassy waste left behind by smelting. In places, 6 meters deep. A fortress gate stands in the middle of it, 4 chambers wide. More than 100 radiocarbon dates were taken there. They place industrial smelting, and that gate, in the 10th and 9th centuries before Christ, the era of David and Solomon. Critics came back hard. They questioned the statistics and noted that desert wood burned in a furnace can be centuries old before it reaches the fire. But another answer reframed the argument. Nomads do not build stone houses. A people can be organized, wealthy, and dangerous, and still leave almost nothing on a windswept plateau. Give that same people a copper mine, and suddenly they leave mountains of evidence. The silence on the highlands may not be the absence of a kingdom. It may only be the absence of stone. So what exactly does Obadiah accuse them of? Read verses 10 to 14 slowly, and 3 charges come apart in your hands. The first is the sin of standing still. On the day you stood aloof, you were as one of them. The Hebrew is not the language of a bystander caught by accident. It is the language of a man who takes a position and holds it. Edom watched. Edom chose to watch, and the verdict is that watching made them the same as the men doing the killing. The second charge is looting. They came through the broken gate after the fighting ended and took what was left. The third is the worst. They went to the crossroads, where people running for their lives had to choose a direction. And there they cut the survivors off and handed them over. Not soldiers, refugees, their own cousins. Is there evidence outside the Bible? One piece, and it needs care. At a Judean desert fort, archaeologists found a broken potsherd with a military dispatch inked on it. It orders reinforcements south immediately and gives the reason in 4 words, lest Edom come there. That does not put Edomites inside Jerusalem. It proves no single verse. It shows only that while Judah fought for its life in the north, a commander in the south was watching the Edomite border. Scripture keeps returning to this sin. A priest and a Levite see a bleeding man on a road and cross to the other side. Doing nothing is a decision. Now back to the rock. The Hebrew word is selah. It simply means rock, crag, cliff. Ancient Hebrew had no capital letters. So when the text says the rock, a translator has to decide, is that a description or a name? The old answer was Petra. The Greek word Petra also means rock. The match looks perfect. But survey after survey in the Petra Basin has turned up no Iron Age town, no Edomite walls, no houses from the age of the prophets. The carved faces are centuries younger. The second candidate stands directly above Petra, a sheer summit whose name means Mother of Cisterns. Excavation up there turned up a lump of clay stamped with a seal. It reads, belonging to Kos Gaber, king of Edom. That same king appears in Assyrian records, paying tribute. But the settlement on that summit is 7th century, 100 years too late for the battle in the Valley of Salt, which leaves the third candidate, and it is the strongest. 3 miles from Edom's capital stands an island of rock, 600 feet high, sheer on every side. Its name is Es-Selah, the rock. There is one way up. A hidden staircase cut into a narrow cleft where a handful of defenders could hold off an army. On the summit, houses, towers, and more than 24 cisterns cut into the bedrock to catch the rain. Unassailable, self-supplying, the kind of place that makes a people feel untouchable, which is the point of the prophecy. Though you soar like the eagle, though your nest is set among the stars, from there I will bring you down. And 300 feet up that cliff, someone carved an answer, a king in a tall crown, holding a staff, facing the symbols of the moon, the sun, and the star. He is not an Edomite king. He is Nabonidus, the last king of Babylon. If that name is unfamiliar, there is a reason. In the book of Daniel, the king in Babylon on the last night is Belshazzar. Belshazzar was his son. Nabataean spent years away from the city and left his son ruling in his place. That is almost certainly why Daniel is offered third place in the kingdom, not second. To read the inscription, archaeologists had to rope down the cliff and work hanging in midair. It commemorates his march through Edom. After that campaign, an independent Edomite king is never named again. The nest came down. So who built Petra? Not Edomites. Arabs out of the desert, the Nabataeans. The first solid record of them is a Greek account of the year 312 before Christ. A Macedonian general sent 4,000 soldiers on a night march to raid them while their men were away at a trade fair. They took the rock, 500 talents of silver, and a fortune in frankincense and myrrh. Then they marched 23 miles, made camp, and slept. The Nabataeans came home, followed them, and struck in the dark. 50 horsemen escaped. Then they did something no one expects from desert nomads. They wrote a letter, a formal diplomatic protest in Aramaic. These were not raiders. This was a state. And what they built at Petra was, before anything else, a water system. They dammed a flooding canyon, tunneled through a mountain, and piped in springs through terracotta laid at a slope calculated not to burst its own joints. Enough water, by one estimate, for 30,000 people. The facade everyone photographs, the treasury, is almost certainly a tomb, most likely of a king named Aretas, and that name reaches the New Testament. When Herod Antipas set aside this king's daughter for another man's wife, her father went to war and destroyed Antipas's army. Many at the time read that defeat as judgment on the man who had executed John the Baptist. Edom's rock had new owners. So what became of Edom? They went west, out of the highlands, into the dry country south of Hebron, the land of their old rival. In Greek, the region took a new name, Idumea. Then, around 125 before Christ, a Judean ruler conquered them, and the Idumeans entered the Jewish nation. Whether that was conquest or assimilation is still argued. Our main source says they were required to be circumcised and keep the law. Another says they joined. Either way, what follows is one of the strangest turns in the whole story. Within a century, a man of Idumean descent sat on the throne in Jerusalem. Herod the Great, a descendant of Esau, ruling the house of Jacob, rebuilding the temple of Jacob's God. His rivals never let him forget it. They called him a half-Jew. And it was in his final years that a family fled to Egypt to keep an infant alive. The last time the Idumeans appear in history, 20,000 of them march into Jerusalem to defend it against Rome. The city fell in the year 70. After that, they are gone. 3 centuries later, Christian writers still use the word Idumea, but only as a name on a map. The people, they note, no longer exist. Now, again, the honest version. Obadiah said there would be no survivor of the house of Esau. Critics point out that on either date, Edom outlived that sentence by centuries. That Ammon and Moab disappeared too, as every small kingdom there eventually did. That no survivor is conventional prophetic language, not a statistic. Those are fair objections. But something remains. Judah was also conquered. Judah was also deported. Judah also lost its temple and its throne. And Judah is still here. Edom is not. The book's second charge is pride, the pride of a people who looked down from a cliff and asked, "Who can bring me down?" They had good reason to feel safe. The staircase, the cisterns, the 1,000-foot drop. All of it was real. None of it held. And in the middle of the book sits the line that explains the rest. "As you have done, it shall be done to you." Then the last words of all. "And the kingdom shall be the Lord's." That answers both sins. Not that Edom was small and Israel was great, but that every rock has an owner. Buses climb the road to Petra. Visitors stand before the treasury and photograph a rock the prophet never saw. The rock he did see stands empty. No road. No crowd. Only a staircase in a cleft. Cisterns full of rainwater. And a Babylonian king carved into the cliff, still watching the valley. A clay tablet from Assyria lists the kings who paid tribute in a single year. One of them is a king of Edom. The name beside his is a king of Judah, Ahaz. A few years before that tablet was cut, with 2 armies marching on Jerusalem, a prophet met Ahaz on a road and told him to ask God for a sign. Anything. As deep as the grave, as high as heaven. And Ahaz said no, so the sign was given anyway. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. Why would a king refuse a promise from God? And who is Emmanuel? That is where we go next.